TXT's story is telling us a lot of things. There are many twists and turns, and when you watch the music videos, it can be a lot. Hello, friends and sunflowers. My name is Elena, and welcome back to the Theory Garden. That's this place, the channel. That's the Theory Garden, and everyone here is my sunflower, and I'm sunflower too, because we all love K-pop stuff. Anyways, this video will be talking about TXT's story completely, basically without spoiler warnings except for one little bit, but we are just kind of going in and talking about things. So if you're planning on reading their webtoon over on Webtoon, or of course their web novel, which is hosted on Wattpad in English, just keep that in mind. There's going to be some talking directly just about stuff that happens without pretty much any spoiler warning except for, like I said, one part. Specifically just because it's actually quite a, like, whoa, shock reveal for people who are reading through it. So I did spoiler warning one part, but besides that one part, I'm just talking about stuff, including the very end of what has been released. The web novel is completed. So TXT's story encompasses all of the music videos that have, or actually all of the media that has the TU or the Star Seekers logo on it. It also has the webtoon, like I said, the web novel, which are basically the same story but told differently. And, 1 second, we gotta get it. This book. And before you ask, this book is sold on the Weaver's shop. People always ask me where it was. It had a very limited run, and I think it came back into stock like one time. So, that's kind of a shame. But if you ever get your hands on this book, it's like a cute little fairy tale retelling. Goes along with the art of like the Eternity album. Eternally album? I always get those two mixed up. Anyways, this book is also Star Seekers content. So, like I said, TXT's web novel is completed, but just because it's finished doesn't actually mean we completely understand all of TXT's story and their narrative. So, even though this video is a deep dive into everything that you need to know, basically, for TXT's story, it is worth noting that there are still things that we don't know. However, this video is divided into sections, so hopefully it'll be easier for you to navigate through the video if you want to look at specific things, or, you know, I tried to organize it in a way that made the most sense. So if you're completely brand new, I hope that from the beginning to end, you'll get a complete understanding of what's going on and what we're working with here. Anyway, that's enough talking. Enough of this intro. Let's get to it. Let's go. So, the multiverse in TXT's story is not as confusing as you initially might believe. Multiverses just in general have the potential to be very chaotic. Just look at everything everywhere all at once. But I'm going to do my best today to explain to you in a way that is smooth and concise, that is hopefully more easy to understand. But feel free to ask questions in the comments. People will respond, I might respond, and also leave your own theories about this, of course, as well. I do try to read everything. So, basically, in every single universe where TXT exists, they have these sort of trials that happen that they have to complete, and they're played out always because they're sort of the same soul, is sort of how I see it. It's always them, the boys of destiny, you know what I mean? These ones that must overcome these trials. We'll get more into what the trials actually are in like the mainline story section, but just understand that it happens to them every universe that they exist in. We're gonna try to do this with a drawing. So basically you kind of have like this central idea that takes place in the universe. It's like a big dot, okay? That's your central idea. It always exists, right? And then from there, different decisions get made by different people, and you have one universe going out this way, one going out this way, this way. It branches off from there. It keeps literally branching and branching and branching and branching outward in every direction. But hope you understand. It ends up looking like a crack like that because it's a fractal universe. Kind of like there's different settings, basically, depending on, you know, where they start from. The central idea is the same, but it branches outward. If you play like Minecraft or something like that, then here's how I will try to describe it to you. Think about how you always start with a different seed when you start a new game. Where the world is the same in theory, but the way that everything is arranged is different. The outcome can be totally shaped based on the parameters of the seed. The same enemies will exist, and the same places are generally there, but the way that you actually encounter them are going to be a little bit different every time. Just, depending on random number generators, essentially. All of these different ideas are what make up the TXT universe. So basically what we're shown is always one version of reality, one of the universes in their multiverse where TXT exist and are encountering part of these trials, like from the mainline universe. Because the trial is the innate part of the universe. It's the base game. The trial is Minecraft. You know what I mean? But the seed is the story that they encounter, the way that the world is. So you have their story, their base game, and then the factors that go into it are like the seed. And it changes the world and the environment and what they are doing and where they might be. I hope that makes sense. So again, because there's this central idea and going outward, this is like how you perceive time. There's also another one that's kind of going like this that looks a little bit different, right? But they're so close to each other, you can kind of just go whoop and jump to them. Or like if everything's branching outward all over the place in the chaos that it is, sometimes they cross paths. Sometimes just, by the nature of things, you can go from this point here all the way to this point over here. And don't ask how it works, because that's outside of my scope of understanding. But it's a thing that it can happen. You can jump through time, okay? It probably looks like that, honestly. I'd say this is a fairly accurate representation of time, and this should be framed. I'll call it time. Oof. This is very ugly writing. Auction started $1,000 US. Thank you very much. So yes, because everything is kind of connected by the central idea, they can travel between different universes, which is what they do in their web novel especially. So, multiverse stuff. But there's also this other thing that exists in TXT's universe, kind of its own pocket dimension. This is Magic Island. So what is Magic Island? If the universe kind of exists as a base, again, like a central point, a central idea, wherever the boys are, Magic Island is kind of like a little bubble that exists on top of that universe. In TXT's story, we see like Magic Island in the real world, physically appearing, always kind of in the same spot. This is a place called Tuksum Park. There are several references to this, such as, in the Magic Island music video, the Frost music video, Sugar Rush Ride music video, the Japanese version, and this kind of exists in the same spot as the theme park. Like, they're like intertwined, but like on top of each other in terms of reality existing. And actually there is a place in their story that is a theme park called Magic Island, so that just makes it extra confusing. So in Tuksum Park there's a place called Magic Island, but there's also our Magic Island superimposed on top of it, and they're not the same thing. Basically the way I see it is, if you have this point in reality, which in this case is Tuksum Park, Magic Island kind of sits on top of it in the same spot. It exists in the same space. Although I think it's like much larger. It's like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. You open the door and it exists in that spot, in that door all of the time. But the space inside it is much larger as well. I think it's also a little bit like that. The AR version from Minisode 1 Blue Hour, that album, I think was likely a way to help sort of depict Magic Island. AR is like Pokemon Go, the digital world literally exists like on top of our same physical space, and you can walk through the physical space, but you're also walking through the digital world. I hope that kind of makes it easier to conceptualize and understand. Basically, you walk through, but in this case, we're always walking in the physical world, but in their case, they're gonna walk in the magical world instead, but it still traverses through the physical world. And this is also why we see like fantasy and reality taking place in the same spot in some music videos. So they are still kind of like separate, obviously, they're their own things, but they sort of sit and work in the same place. But there are times that it's easier to like kind of go to and access this Magic Island. Not the theme park, but like the magical one. A lot of these ways have been highlighted in the past. When the sun starts to set at 5:53, Blue Hour or Twilight, like in the Japanese movie Your Name, it becomes a little bit easier to go there because, you know, time. For some reason, being on a train is a good way to go there, as we literally see them do that so many times. They also seem to be able to find their way there through water and sort of places that hold your reflection, like a mirror or just even water reflecting it back to yourself. The reflection of yourself in the water. Things that hold your reflection. Most of the recent ways to highlight this were in the recent Japanese version of Sugar Rush Ride, so that's an easy reference point. Magic Island as a concept is used a lot in TXT's music videos, most likely because it's just a really beautiful place to film and there's a lot that they could probably get away with doing in that kind of a space as well. Like, where else are you gonna say, yeah, they got shipwrecked, you know? And then they get tempted by all these things. Like, that's perfect. It's Magic Island. And it's so beautiful, you know? It's gorgeous, and you can play with colors. I've gone off the rails here, but it's like cinematographer's dream, you know? It's a good music video spot, I guess. In a way, Magic Island is a place of dreams and probably nightmares. Magic itself probably comes from here, and of course, this is also the birthplace of the dragon. So I teased you with the dragon. So let's talk about the dragon. This is the dragon that appears, of course, in the Magic Island music video, and the Eternity music video, and the Doom's Night animation. It is actually part of the prophecy to end the world. It's literally nicknamed the Dragon of the End for that reason. When the dragon appears, the apocalypse is sure to follow. It seems that how the apocalypse happens depends on, you know, various factors, differs slightly between universes. But in many cases, the dragon brings it. In others, it just generally spells out the decline of the human race, or all life as we know it. In songs like Can't We Just Leave the Monster Alive, they actually talk about like ignoring the dragon, the monster that signifies the end of the world, the end of their quest, and then simply playing around instead and just doing whatever they want. So you see them ignoring their responsibilities and running away from things in the music videos. That will tie into this kind of aspect, at least in regards to the story, but more on that later. Wrong section. Additionally, and this is a big spoiler, so this is, you remember I said there's a spoiler warning in here? This is the spoiler warning, okay? This is an actual big spoiler, okay? If you don't want to hear a spoiler related to the dragon, kind of, please skip this section. Please skip it. I'm doing a countdown, okay? 5. After this, I'm talking about spoilers, okay? Spoiler time. Hello, and welcome to the spoiler section, the spoiler corner, if you will, since I'm sitting in a corner. So the manager for TXT is actually another reoccurring character in their story, and he has different roles depending on if he's in the webtoon or in the web novel, kind of strangely. However, the more surprising of the two is in fact the webtoon. So let me go through that really quickly first. I won't be showing any pictures because I just don't want people scrolling through to accidentally see what I'm talking about. He, DK, is literally revealed to be working for the dragon. He describes himself as the eyes and ears of the Dragon of the End, who is supposed to judge the world and then bring the apocalypse. There is even a point in the story where the boys kind of wonder, like, is he even on our side? Because, like, yeah, it seems like he's helping us, but he's working for the dragon. I think that he believes in the webtoon that the world will end differently, but he ends up leaving, I think, to another universe? I don't know. It also happens in the web novel version, except he literally, like, blinks out of existence. Here, I feel like he's, like, disappearing to another universe, or he can switch between universes. I'm not sure. Of course, he doesn't do this until he gives them some food for thought, such as, why do you think the dragon wants to cause the apocalypse? Asking the real questions and then not answering them. Let's go. In the web novel, he's actually a powerful sorcerer who, in another universe, introduced the boys to the game, like the D&D game, that of course showed them how their fates would play out. And so he's literally the fortune teller, the tarot reader, who gives them their true names. I think this is also true in their universe as well, it's kind of implied. And he also gives them advice on how to defeat the dragon before disappearing. So yeah, there's a bit of a difference between the webtoon and the web novel. I'm going to chalk it up to multiverse things. But again, at least in the webtoon, not in the web novel, but in the webtoon, he is on the side of the dragon and therefore an antagonist. But again, he doesn't seem to want to help them. He wants to help them figure it out. This could just be because, you know, the boys reaching power is also what causes the rebirth of the dragon, so it's generally a good thing for the dragon, you know? But more on that when the section ends, which is now. The spoiler section, over, gone, goodbye, done. So the dragon itself actually comes with multiple factions as well. If you remember in the Doom's Night, they were attacked by hooded figures. This also happens in the webtoon and the web novel. We actually know a lot about these figures at this point in time, which we obviously didn't when it first came out. They are one of two warring factions called the Dragon Slayer clan. Of course, they want to slay or destroy the Dragon of the End. And they have multiple plots against the boys, especially early on, because basically the boys coming into their magic is the trigger for them having the Dragon of the End actually being born and appearing. So their existence is literally what causes the birth of the dragon. And potentially that actually might be why the island appears as well, because the boys exist, so the island must also exist because the dragon most likely is birthed on Magic Island. Most likely. It's not confirmed, but that's kind of how the vibe that I get. It was especially mentioned in that book that I showed you. Kind of had the dragon on the island thing going on. Just remember, universe rules, all that kind of stuff. Boys are there, so of course the dragon must also be there, and so must Magic Island. How they, the Dragon Slayer clan, figured this out, I have no idea. I don't know. I just want to interject because we actually do know why they know all this stuff. Basically, when the world merged with, like, Magic Island, when Magic Island appeared and magic appeared in the world, they started studying, like, parallel universes, and they noticed a trend like, oh, whenever the Boys of Destiny appear, so does the dragon, and then the apocalypse happens and it blinks out of existence. So that is why they know why this all happens, and I assume this is where they got their artifacts as well. I'm just guessing, we don't know that for sure, but most likely that's where it all came from. So, answer obtained. And there's also another faction that knows this, the Dragon Clan, which is of course on the side of the dragon. Basically, they want to work with the dragon so the dragon can take out everyone who's not magical, and only the superior people who are magical will survive in the enduring world after the apocalypse. Supposedly. That's what they think. And they either play a mildly antagonistic role or an outright antagonistic role, depending on which version of the story that you are reading, because there's kind of a tentative, like, oh, we're helping the Boys of Destiny thing going on, and they have varying degrees of trust early on that obviously turns into distrust later, but, like, in the web novel, they're a lot less antagonistic towards the boys themselves than they become in the webtoon, so. They also have access to ancient documents, and they're able to extract this substance called black water, which is actually a major plot point as well. But the reason they have access to this resource, black water, is because they reside in a place that I think is kind of like Magic Island, like its own little pocket universe dimension that's superimposed on top of another place in time and space. I think it's like that. And so I believe that they extract the black water from there. Maybe. That's kind of feeling like that's kind of what's implied. So they have their own land that's kind of like Magic Island, but it's not Magic Island. And from there, they extract the black water. And potentially this is where they get the texts and stuff and all their knowledge. I don't know. But they are the ones who give black water, which is like this resource that sort of helps improve technology and is a better fuel source than a lot of things, to the general populace. And it only appeared when magic appeared in the world. And of course, they control a lot of it. Actually, Blackwater potentially also only comes into existence because of the Dragon of the End? Or maybe because TXT exists, so too do pocket universes, and thus they always will find the source of Blackwater, no matter what? I don't know. But beyond the uses I just mentioned, you know, it being a potent energy source, it has other uses as well. You can use it to replenish your, like, magical energy in the form of a magic potion. A potion. They literally just call them potions. Think of, like, a video game potion. It's that. However, of course, there are some caveats to it. In the web novel, extracting the black water actually causes these shockwaves to happen, and people who are hit by these shockwaves who don't have magical abilities are, like shown to be quite affected by it. They fall severely ill. Potentially they pass away. We aren't entirely sure. Something happens to a previous manager for TXT, and he just never comes back, basically. So, it's not great. And on top of that, when they're extracting this, and this is something that they don't know, they're actually extracting from the well of human emotions. So when you've extracted and completely depleted the amount of black water, that's it. Humans don't have emotions anymore. They've basically lost what makes them human. They've taken away humanity. All for the, purpose of technology, I guess. Advancement. Which, you can look at that however you want to look at that. But, I'm sure that's saying something about society. And additionally, this being used as a way to replenish magic actually also has a drawback. Because the potions are shown to be very addictive, and they kind of like cap your level of magic ability. So the more you use them, there's like a lot of drawbacks to using them. So it'll lessen the amount of magic that you can use. And then also just want to put a big disclaimer, this information was all pulled from multiple sources, both the webtoon, the web novel, and I guess sort of how we see it depicted in things like Temptation concept video. So the information may change going forward, because especially when it comes from the web novel, it's kind of like, are they sticking with that? I don't know. I like to think of the web novel as a draft from what they actually do. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's what we know. Anyways, I'm sure you've been waiting for me to mention this next antagonist. The cat. It is the most infamous. It is sometimes called the odd-eyed cat, the devil, if you are like directly quoting like some of the song lyrics and story itself, actually, the web novel especially. And yeah, of course, the devil by the window. Anyways, this cat is an enigma. It's not really a cat. It's kind of a concept. Actually, even though the web novel is completed, the cat's like existence and purpose in their universe, and its goals are never fully explained, unless I completely missed it. We have no idea as to its true goals or its reasonings for the actions that it takes. It leaves them unanswered in the web novel. But of course, just because we don't know the reason it does these things, we do know a little bit about some of the background of it, and of course some of what it can do. Okay, I just wanted to mention something, because since the beginning of writing and filming this, a lot of chapters have come out in the webtoon. So actually in the webtoon, the cat has one mention of its master, and I don't know who its master is or what it is. There's no indication of what that is, but they're doing something for their master. So that is the cat's ambition, I guess, which previously was unknown because, like I said, it wasn't in the web novel unless I missed it. So, fun fact. So it actually came from another parallel universe somewhere, and it potentially wants to go back. It seems to be able to hop from universe to universe, and I'm not sure what's preventing it from going back to its universe, if that is actually its goal. It literally has the ability to freeze time. It can basically unlock the boys' abilities for them, mind you, not in a way that is good for them, but it can do that. It has that power somehow, so it knows stuff innately about the universe. So it's clearly very powerful, but for whatever reason it does need the boys of destiny, and it does need them to give into it. It seems to also want to cause the apocalypse. I'm not sure if it's just the apocalypse itself is a perfect setting for its goals, whatever, of course, its end goal may be. Again, not sure. But also, it may just exist to sort of show the concept of pure evil, which, according to the web novel and thus Hybe itself, the concept of evil is literally greed. As in, greed itself, anyone being greedy and having the emotion of greed is pure evil. So this emotion itself is evil. Like, they equate to each other. This will, of course, come back to play when I talk about TXT'S message in section 5 of this video. But I guess this is kind of like what the devil is when the devil is sung about in songs like Devil by the Window or Sugar Rush Ride. It is associated with the cat, greed, evil, the devil. Oh, but I hear my flowers in the distance yelling. Lena, they call out to me. But you said the butterfly was the temptation in your previous theories. Yes, you're right. I did. And I do not take that back. The butterfly, I still think, is the temptation. Because it literally exists on Magic Island. And again, in theory, the universe trials of the story are trying to draw the boys onto the island. And the island itself likely only exists because it is going to eventually be the thing that bursts the dragon, which brings the apocalypse. So anything on the island is just part of that system, right? So the butterflies drawing the boys into the island and trying to keep them there is what it's supposed to do. They draw them in with beauty, and then the birth of the dragon happens, and hopefully they're kept on the island indefinitely while the dragon destroys the rest of all of reality. It arrives, it can do its thing, and the boys are like over here having a good old time, and maybe stuck there forever in, I don't know, a Neverland eternity of something. And, whoops. They weren't able to stop the dragon. Yeah. I mean, the island itself is shown to be alive. And personally at the point where I really just believe it's meant to draw them in to cause their ruin. And cause the ruin of everything else, because that is its purpose. I think the dragon is kind of just an extension of that. And it just sort of seems to have the same goal as the cat, so maybe that's why the equation of the cat and the butterflies was there in the first place. Not to mention that the butterflies also cause the ringing in their ear, which is talked about in the song Tinnitus. And yes, I do pronounce it tinnitus, not tinnitus, which I think that's how it was. Tinnitus. I'm Canadian. I don't know if that's a Canadian thing. Apparently they're both correct, so the people were like, it's not pronounced that way. I had to look it up. It's pronounced both ways, but I'm so sorry. I'm saying tinnitus. I feel like apologizing is very Canadian of me, but anyways. In the lyrics of the song Tinnitus, it talks about them losing their ambition. No longer a rock star, now just take the star off their rock. This explains why we've seen Beomgyu being terrorized by butterflies in Sugar Rush Ride. But of course this ties into their overall message, which again, I'll talk about that later. Apparently there's a lot of issues and antagonists within our real life as well. Who knew? Sometimes it seems as if the butterflies act in the boys' favor, such as towards the end of the Japanese Sugar Rush Ride music video, where they appear to lead them to a car that will lead them out into reality. I cannot fully explain that. I think it's possible that it may be Moa in that instance. Or maybe they're going further into the dream, although that doesn't necessarily match with the whole idea of them going into and falling towards reality that their newest comeback has. They forcibly have to leave the dream, and now they're just free falling down to reality. So there's some questions still yet unanswered, but that's not what this video is about. That's for another video at another time. Please subscribe. Okay. Anyways, so those were the people, the entities, I guess, that are considered antagonists in TXT's story. They're the ones that are against the boys. But what about the ones who are with the boys? Like, who's on their side? Well, there aren't many. But let's talk about the biggest supporter of all. Moa. Us. Now, we have a lot of names in the story. Ion, for example, is the name of TXT's fans in the web novel, webtoon sort of area. And actually, TXT is called Star One in that instance. But yeah, everyone has a different name. But there's also a kind of collective Moa, basically, which are all of the Moa from all of the universes that have passed due to the apocalypse. In the web novel, they come together to form something called the Collective Missing, which is essentially all of the souls of all of Moa or Ion have supported TXT, or Star One, however you want to call them, and they come together to take the form of the Eternity Girl. If you've ever seen anyone kind of talk about the ghost in TXT storylines, this is them. I believe Hybe had this plan to incorporate TXT's fans into the storyline from the very beginning. This was actually before Weverse and before we had a fandom name at all. There was like a fan cafe that existed, which was for TXT, and it was called TXT Universe. Fan cafes are basically like websites where fans can interact with their members, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, because it's kind of something that happened before Weverse came along, and then now a lot of like artists are on Weverse. So fan cafe, we've had one. It was called TXT Universe, and all the fans were there, and TXT wrote like little diaries on it and stuff. And additionally, our first fandom name was not MOA, it was Yeonjun, which, despite what it sounds like in English, was actually a pun in Korean that meant forever. It ended up getting changed because Tiffany Young's fandom name was also Yeonjun, and it had a similar meaning. I forgot to add this, but MOA actually means gather together in Korean, so that's just another thing to take into consideration. Of course, it was significant to me that the fandom name that they chose essentially means forever or eternity, because that's also what MOA, moments of alwaysness, also means. Moments that will always exist in the memories. The fans that follow them through space and time. In the story, TXT ends up kind of relying on MOA the most besides themselves. In the web novel, it's actually thanks to MOA that they defeat the dragon at the end, which is probably not surprising to anyone. I think we all came to that conclusion, right? Obviously, if there is a character that is the fandom has to make a difference in the end of the story, and yeah, that definitely is the case. And this will likely be the case for every single universe that, they overcome the apocalypse in successfully. I will say, in some cases, such as in the Act Lovesick VCR, which is like the videos that they show when they're touring in between performances, there was a scene where MOA ends up a little, like, kind of evil looking and a little corrupted. And in the case where, like, the alternate universe MOA, like in Japanese Good Boy Gone Bad music video, there is a girl who represents kind of MOA in general in those videos, as the boys themselves told us, and she does seem to doubly betray them as well. Now, this hasn't to date been described in either the webtoon or the web novel, so there's still some like intrigue as to why this happened, and it just hasn't really been addressed. But likely it's more universe shenanigans, because that's just what we've come to expect at this point. Now, they actually do have an experience, like, during the webtoon that it seems to them like they've been betrayed, but it is worth noting that that is the cat's doing. That makes me wonder if, like, all of these incidents that are, like, MOA betraying the boys is actually the cat's doing, because, after all, it's odd that MOA, who in the Japanese version of Good Boy Gone Bad called the police on Yeonjun, would also keep all this money for herself. But if we remember that the cat is also like a representation of the devil, and specifically greed, which the story considers to be the utmost evil, well, maybe it really was the cat and greed after all. Okay, now that we are going on to the next section, let's put these away carefully. If I put it on my shelf, it's gonna break. It's gonna be an earthquake and it's gonna go boop. So, goodbye friends. This shall be put away safely. Finally, I would like to address one thing. So, I have previously talked about an even larger universe on top of this TXT's multiverse, called the Hybe Universe, like Hybe Cinematic Universe, Hybe Universe, not university. Important distinction. Anyways, since the webtoon has started to come out, I feel like Hybe has actually been moving away from this kind of collective universe. So previously I was like, oh, all the Hybe groups that have storylines are connected, and I have a lot of evidence for it. But it's just like, yeah, since the webtoons came out, I don't know, it just feels like Hybe has sort of distanced themselves from that possibility. Like, the base idea for the Hybe universe was that it mainly linked to the idea of Magic Island, which again is this kind of pocket universe. It's sort of superimposed on reality. The way to get there is, through trains, and it was a major connectivity point. And, there was evidence that everyone was traveling to and from this island. And of course, the cat, which is actually like the starring antagonist of TXT's story, was also in BTS's universe, the Save Me storyline. So, like, it had both the same antagonist in that sense, and, like, I don't even know if the cat technically dies at the end of this story, although I would assume that maybe, like, the cat ends with TXT. Like, maybe they find a way to just, But again, if it represents greed, I don't know. Maybe it's, you can never really get rid of it, you know what I mean? However, I just feel like they kind of dropped all the references to that, especially, like, they kind of went into it. There was a little bit with Hybe and the island, and then it just, like, has dropped off almost completely. I thought that maybe they were moving away from it, or were purposely avoiding referencing it, and I was actually ready to give up completely on this theory. But something that happened to make me rethink it recently, like as a possibility of still being the case. Although again, I still feel like they've sort of shifted away from it, which is too bad because I think it's really cool. I mean, you can have like the whole MCU if you want, you know, but like the Hybe HCU. And Hype's story, Dark Moon actually recently got a whole theme park built around them in Lotte World in Korea. And in some of the advertisements, they actually mention Magic Island. A new world opens up on Magic Island. A new world opens up on Magic Island in the advertisement for Dark Moon, not TXT'S story. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm composed and calm. I am a stoic. Anyways, so Magic Island isn't really like an explicit part of Hype's storyline. Like I said, they mentioned it one time. It's not like they go to Magic Island in Hype's Dark Moon storyline from what we've seen. They still have like their own multiverse thing going on. I'll eventually do like everything in the Hybe Universe update again. It is a very known part of TXT'S. So it's kind of interesting that they, not me even, they bridged that gap themselves, because I'm sure they gave that advertising text to them, you know? I guess also, just so that we're covering all possibilities and we're not being completely delusional here, it is a possibility that this is actually just a hint that there's also going to be a Starseekers theme park as well. Out of the 4 like Hybe webtoons that are currently going on, Crimson Heart, Starseekers, Dark Moon, and Chuckle, of course, Dark Moon was the most popular one, so it kind of makes sense to me that they've made a theme park for it, but it's just very specific wording, and it feels significant to me. So, I don't know, we'll have to see. Maybe they'll get a Starseekers one, and that was kind of just like a, ooh, Starseekers coming, because they have Magic Island. Or maybe it's a, everything's connected still, don't step away yet, Lena. Oh, guys, I can't anymore. I don't know, maybe it was just a fun little nod to it. Maybe I'm completely delusional and I've lost it. I don't know. Again, we shall see. Anyways, that's the end of this section. Section 1 is over! Out! Done! Let's go on to Section 2. So I've just kind of given you guys a lot about the like understanding and setup of how the rules work in this story. But there's actually kind of a base like setup universe as well, like a world building universe that I want to share with you, because it makes up a lot of the fractal universes that of course make up a lot of their content. Now there's actually a lot of information that's given to us about why this happens, but it only appears in the medium of like music videos and stuff like that, and not so much in the webtoon and web novel. This is kind of stuff that TXT's characters might never actually know or learn about in the story, at least not fully understand, but we as an outside audience have this information so that we can better understand what's going on. I think it's worth noting that TXT's whole universe takes place in basically the setting of Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D, and it's like literally a game. This is both in concept and actually visible in practice as well. For example, in the Doom's Night, we get a scene where there are children playing a game of D&D, and then it literally cuts to them defeating the dragon as part of their D&D game. This goes in line with what I think their base universe was, the original universe, that one concept. Like if I showed you that one image again with the concept where everything goes out from it, it's the same thing. That one concept that basically birthed the rest of the universes. This is where the whole concept of the boys of destiny who must face the dragon to save the world from the apocalypse actually came to be. It was a game of D&D. They literally built the world that we're seeing. And like I said, part of me just thinks that that's exactly what Soobin is seeing in The Doom's Night when he's shown the kids playing a game of D&D. Although it is worth noting that in the web novel there is a scene where kind of like that powerful sorcerer, the same one that gave them their true names in Frost, kind of teaches them about their fate through a game of D&D, so that's worth noting as well. But this seems like a different scene from that, but I did just want to mention that both of those exist. Okay, apparently the game is called Stardust in this universe, not D&D, but as far as I can tell, it's pretty much exactly like D&D, so there you go. But this is why a lot of the symbolism that they're using is with D&D symbolism. The dice, for example, like Soobin literally has a die. I have the die. I have it. The die, for example. This is not in focus. The die that you roll, and well, it has a lot of different uses, actually. It's a teleporter, it's like an artifact. Potentially Moa gave it to Soobin. They use it to get places through different universes, and in my opinion, the higher the number, if it's like a 20, which is a good number, it's a natural 20, it's the highest you can get on a D20, because it goes up to 20. The higher the score, right? This is why we see it as symbolism, because it was literally based off of the game of D&D, so it appears as a motif throughout their story and throughout their universe. And it is here, in this base universe, that they kind of make a wish, like how we see in Nap of a Star, on a star, or under a star, perhaps. And again, a star is often a representation of Moa, who is always watching over them. And I actually believe the star granted their wish, thus creating the multiverse of the TXT universe as we know it. And, you know, we always see the boys of TXT fighting together just like they always wished for. They always want to be together like this. And yeah, we do have a few odd moments where it seems to sort of suggest that this wish came to be, and now this is how it is. But it isn't explicitly said yet at this point. This is kind of my own theory. But I'm not alone in believing this theory. I just want to share it with you because I think that when you understand that this is a wish that, of course, gets twisted, everything starts to make a little bit of sense. Because, like, obviously, like, it's gonna get twisted. Every kind of wish like this in a story will always be twisted. I mean, let's think about it. Even though, you know, if you're playing a game where you're fighting and, you know, there's a dragon and all this crazy stuff happens, that's a lot of fun. But if that actually happened to you in real life, it's a lot less fun. You know what I mean? Especially when you're a kid, you don't really think about, like, those sort of things that happen when you're actually in a life and death situation. So to them, what's a fun game that you can play together with your friends? Of course you'd want that to be more real. But then, in reality, it's not as fun as the game. Anyways, when they first started this game, each of their characters had, like, different strengths and aspects, and were from different races, which were all, like, fictional races, and likewise had some sort of fate, a trial, a true name that they always have to overcome. Again, later, this is told to us in the story as a true name, which I haven't talked about yet, but I have mentioned several times. They also each have a familiar, but I'm not gonna lie, I can't find any, like, reason that the familiars are there besides the fact that they're just there. So I'm not gonna really bother talking about them today, but they do have familiars. They appear in the Doom's Night, and they appear in the webtoon, and I think the web novel. But, like, again, they don't really do anything as far as I'm aware, so we're just skipping it today. But they exist. Wait, are they even in the webtoon? No, I'm second guessing myself. I don't think they're in the webtoon either. Basically, they're only in the web novel and the Doom's Night music video. I don't think they're in the webtoon, so we're just completely skipping them. I don't think they have a very big purpose either way. In the web novel, they could have easily been removed and it would have been the same story, basically. Anyways, let's go over each of the characters individually and just cover what is sort of their aspect, what they have going on with their characters. Again, recurring in each universe. Yeonjun. His character is part of the warrior clan called the Wendigos, not to be confused with the Native American Wendigos. I think this is sort of separate. It looks the same, but, like, the concept of them is completely different. They're called the Great Deer Warriors, the Wendigos. They do, of course, have antlers, but that's about where the similarities end. So, again, no correlation. He uses a spear and he's exceptionally skilled at any sort of physical endeavor. In the Minisode 1 VR concept photos, he had a kind of pie with a maxed out skill in strength, of course. In both the webtoon and the web novel, he is shown and is described as having the ability to sort of jump around and be really good at aerobics and skills relating to that. Of course, all this physicality comes with a caveat. His true name is the one who shall not eat dogs. Yes, you heard that correctly. The one who shall not eat dogs. And this comes from the myth of Kukalin, who is this figure who, essentially by eating dogs, his power is weakened, and he is sort of tricked into eating a dog and thus losing his power, which is, of course, as you'll see if you haven't yet, that's pretty one-to-one with what happens with Yeonjun, but more on that later. Soobin is our next character, and his characters from the elf clan, basically. Elves have a affinity for seeing the future, specifically through dreams, which is how Soobin sees the future, because of course he is part of the elf clan. In Minisode 1, his wisdom is maxed out, which I guess is just because he has future insight to draw on, and also he is the leader. In battle, he also wields a bow, which feels very elfy, and definitely has nothing to do with Legolas. Thank you, Lord of the Rings. His true name is the one who is believed by no one. This is modeled off of a Greek mythological figure called Cassandra. She could also tell the future, except whenever she told people the future, no one believed her, unfortunately. Soobin, I don't really feel like he has that same issue, but perhaps it's meant to be a challenge regardless, one that maybe he's already overcome in the universe that we're kind of following him in. Actually, I have additional insight on Soobin's true name and why it seems like, why is that his true name if everyone believes him? It's because he chooses not to believe in the future that he sees, because he sees a lot of death and destruction, and so he's like, actually, I don't want to believe in that. This was in the web novel, this was in the webtoon in like the chapters that came out after I started writing this, so, This is just a little update because that is new information and I wanted you guys to know. So that is why that is his true name. Also, when he gets his true name in like Frost music video and in the webtoon, it kind of is she's holding like a glass orb of some kind. In the Frost music video, he has like a little glass marble. I don't actually know what that's for. It's not mentioned in the web novel as far as I'm aware of at all. It does kind of look like it's a seeing glass of some kind in the webtoon art. He does kind of like look through it to see different perspectives, I think, in the Frost music video, but again, it doesn't really come up, so I'm not sure what its purpose exactly is. It also seems to function as a portal to get them to Magic Island in that music video, and I mean, it is something that gives reflection, so I guess it falls under that rule. I did speculate it actually has memories in it or something like that, but everything about that is just speculation that I've made in the past. And again, portals are usually opened by the die, so I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, I digress. That's Soobin. Beomgyu's character is next. He comes from a race of dryads, which are tree spirits, and he is a druid. His stat is dexterity, which is often used by magic users in games, and of course he is the healer of the group. He battles by essentially like growing plants and using them as obstacles and making them attack people, or like startling them because suddenly there's a tree in front of their face when there wasn't moments prior, and of course by healing others. And we've actually seen him in this kind of healing support role almost from the beginning. Like, go back to, like, Runaway with the fire and the Band-Aid scene. Like, what a perfect man. I love this foreshadowing. His true name is The Last Thing That Remains in the Box. Of course, this is a reference to Pandora's box. And the answer to which, of course, is hope. Basically, it contains a special mechanism, and it helps them, in that universe, destroy the great evil. But we also see like an infinite loop of him opening this box and like looking into it in the Frost music video. And of course more infinite versions of him in the Eternally music video. But inside that box does lie the answer. Hope. Hope that there's a better future, that they can defeat this in some universe somewhere. And this is something that Beomgyu must learn to cling to and bring with him in the final battle. Next is Taehyun's character, and his maxed out skill is intelligence. and this is for a very good reason. His character comes from the race called Noctua, wizard owls. These are highly intelligent beings capable of understanding all levels of magical text, which basically you have to have a high magical understanding in order to just read magical script in general, which most people can't do. But not Taehyun. He can read anything. Well, almost. He can get there, you know. He unlocks, like, levels. He gets good. He gets good. But you often see Taehyun with a book for this reason. He essentially just reads the spell from the book to cast his magic, which is very powerful. And then beyond that, he's also very good at illusion magic, so he can make an illusion. And it looks cool. It may, in fact, look very realistic. They often describe, like, he gets so good that it's difficult to discern reality from non-reality, which does make me think of Magic Island a little bit. All of this knowledge, of course, is reflected in his true name, the one hanging upside down from a tree with deep roots. This is, in fact, a reference to Odin. He hung from a tree, and he used his crows to basically go and gather information for him from, like, the outside world that's not a tree. And in some versions of the myth, he's apparently associated with turning into an owl, which is why we also see an owl in regards to Taehyun, Noctua. However, it is the crows that spell his downfall, as we see that also depicted in Frost with Taehyun. So Odin and Taehyun both had their downfall because of the crows. So interestingly, Taehyun's character himself doesn't relate this to Odin. He says in the webtoon, which of course came out after I started writing this, he says that it's related to the Hanged Man tarot card, which I think I did compare it to in my Frost video, but it's cool that it has that reflection. And so he basically takes that to mean like, hey, I'm the one who needs to learn about the true names. And also, I think the Hanged Man, like the way he describes it, also is in line with Odin. And small spoiler, he also loses his left eye, which is in line with Odin's mythology as well. So it still is mirroring Odin, but also it equates to the Hanged Man. He also mentions that not all true names are equated to tarot cards, so just keep that in mind. And finally, that brings us to our youngest member, Huening Kai. Kai is a summoner, and he comes from a race called Orinth, which is described as white birds, so the White Bird Clan. This, of course, explains his wings. And, surprise, surprise, being a summoner, he can summon things, including creatures from, like, other realities, so, like, other universes that aren't the one he's originally from. So even if there's not even magic from his universe, he can summon one from, like, a parallel universe where that creature exists. He can summon a griffin, you know? Like, just be like, oh, yeah, me and Griffin, we go back, you know, we go way back, we're buds now. So that's fun. By the way, his maxed out stat in the minisode version was, of course, charisma, and I think that's honestly just because he makes friends with everyone, and he's a very friendly person, but also because he immediately makes contracts with creatures from other realities just by being him. So I would say that's a max charisma stat, if you know, you're playing a game, and that would make sense. They're just immediately friends with you. His true name is the one that built the labyrinth, which is, of course, a reference to Daedalus, from Greek mythology, who, of course, he built the labyrinth and then hid the Minotaur in the labyrinth. To mirror that to TXT terms, it's him who builds the labyrinth that contains the cat instead. But in an alternate universe, not this one. No, don't worry about that. But we'll get there. Additionally, Daedalus also watched his son, Icarus, fly too close to the sun, have his wax wings melt, and then fall to the ground. So that's fun. It's not very reassuring when you also remember that Hyuga has wings! Yeah. Anyway, basically all of their true names have alternate universe counterparts that they encounter, at least in the web novel, and that kind of impart their knowledge to the members based on what they experienced, because they all had gone through what was essentially a bad ending to the story that they're trying to change still, for potentially a very long time, depending on who you are. But in terms of sort of the base universe, this kind of set up universe that we're talking about, that point in time that, you know, all the other stuff sort of stems from, you just have to remember that there's always some sort of promise of them to remain together that is made in every universe, which later gets twisted, either by the star, or Moa, or the cat, or of course Yeonjun, because poetically it is potentially Yeonjun who makes that error in judgment and makes a promise that he shouldn't have to someone that he shouldn't have trusted. And yeah, in a lot of universes, Yeonjun's guilty for being the reason that they're in the situation that they're in, as deep as they are. Like, it could have been resolved faster or, you know, more smoothly if Yeonjun wasn't in that situation, but sometimes it's not even his fault. Like, the cat is kind of the reason for it. It pushes him into a corner. So, we'll get into that. We'll get into that in the next section, which we're about to go into. But yeah, those are the conditions for the TXT universe as we know it. The Starseekers verse. So this is the one that I believe is most familiar to people. Like, when people think of TXT's universe, they're going to be thinking of the mainline Starseekers storyline. So the music videos and kind of like videos just in general that are a definite part of the story are ones that are labeled either with TU if they're a little bit older, and the Starseekers if they're a little bit more current, because it was originally called TU as in TXT Universe. These are the What Do You See questioning videos, the Nap of the Star music video, which unfortunately does not have subtitles throughout like the titled sections, the Magic Island music video, which same thing, it doesn't have subtitles for like any of the parts that are like they're like texting and stuff, so you have to find them elsewhere. The Eternity music video, the Frost music video, and of course the Doom's Night, which is like an animation type thing. Beyond that media, there's also the web novel and the webtoon. The webtoon is free to read. You can just open the app and read it up to like a certain point, but at one point it will just be completely free to read because it's just the new chapters that you have to pay for. For the web novel, if you can read Japanese or Korean, you can basically read it the same way, completely free up to a certain point. If you can't, unfortunately, you only get the first chapter free in English. Anyways, all three mediums of this kind of tell the same story but with a different focus in mind. I feel like it's written from a different way. If you read them, you'll see why I say that. Like, it feels like it's different, but it's the same thing. Another thing is, it's important to note that the Starseekers verse sort of changed the names of the characters around. So Yeonjun is now Eugene, Soobin is now Seoul, Beomgyu is now Vikin, Taehyun is now Taho, and Kai is now Abyss. Their group name is also Star 1 instead of TXT, and Moa is now called Ion. If you can't remember that, neither can I. Start the counter, because I have a feeling I am going to say the wrong name a couple times in this section. We're going to challenge ourselves. Can we say the Starseekers names as the Starseekers names, or am I going to call them the members' names? So why did they give them different names, actually? I believe the reason for this is really simple, for differentiation reasons. Of course, this is a fictional story, however, in the past, with BTS's story Save Me, there were certain events that happened to certain characters that later trended on social media, like, oh my god, this person got arrested! But they didn't get arrested in real life, they got arrested in the story. But it trended, and people were like, oh, I always knew that person was gonna get it. No, that's not even what happened. So I think just to avoid any potential situations like that, where haters just get fueled for no reason, they've changed the names. They've differentiated it on purpose, and I think that's the reason. Obviously, that's never been verified, but we can assume. Anyways, with all that out of the way, this is the main story as we know it. So they are magic idols in this universe, as in magic exists, and they perform as idols, but also use magic as part of their performances. And actually, the story starts out with them not being able to use magic at all. They're one of the few idols that don't use magic, which means that they're not as successful, because in this world, idols kind of performing with magic is a normal thing. Like, that's just part of the industry. And if you can't do that, then you're kind of at a disadvantage. The irony is this universe didn't actually originally have magic. It actually, well, from my understanding, merged with another universe that did have magic, so magic suddenly came to be about 10 years prior to the start of the story, so Star 1, TXT, Star 1 was a child. We're children at that point. This is actually where all of the antagonists come into play, and it kind of gets a little bit messy because they all have different views on magic and how it should be sort of used in the future. And obviously this is where TXT's magic comes Star One's magic comes to play, for obvious reasons. That's when magic appeared, so. Now in this story, in the mainline universe, obviously it's part of a multiverse, and in this particular one where the main bulk of what we see happens, they're both set up for failure and kind of success. Success for the sole reason that they actually have the help of certain other universes that give them things. So basically it's a multiverse and they end up interacting with other universes, which again will help them out. There's a lot more setups for failure than there is success, and I think it just so happens that this was the perfect one where they're like, yeah, because there's a lot of failure conditions. First, they're not very good at magic. In this universe, magic came to be very late, so they're just not good at it. They literally get it like throughout the course of the timeline that we're seeing them, but the events that cause the apocalypse are already coming to play, like they're already happening, so they learned magic very late. In some universes, they've known magic for so long, and it's like late in their life that this is happening, and it's just like, so that's bad for them. The second is because, The second is because Yeonjun makes a contract with a cat very early on, yet again. It's just so early in the timeline that he encounters this creature, this cat. It literally, because they don't have very much magic, it kind of backs him into a corner and then only comes to offer its help, you know, when they're in absolute dire need, and he can do nothing but accept it, basically. So that's unfortunate. This action previously in other timelines actually dooms him. So this is why we see like a dead Yeonjun a lot. A dead Yeonjun a lot. A lot of dead Yeonjuns, and of course other people as well, because sometimes they all get, you know, taken down. So the frequent question is this actually going to be the mainline universe? Like, is this the one, the strongest one that makes it to the end? Like, do they actually defeat the dragon here? Do they stop the apocalypse? Do they succeed in however it is that it's going to happen? And now there is also another consistent aspect that can be seen in the mainline universe, and that is a betrayal. Someone always is perceived to betray them. I say perceived because this isn't always what's actually happening. In fact, I think it's usually not what's actually happening. So in one instance, they think it's Soul's mother. It might be like another member they think has betrayed them, a faction that they're working with, or just anyone else. Sometimes just appears and they're like, no, how could you betray us this way? I believe in most cases this is actually the cat causing it to look as if they have been betrayed, but then they haven't actually been. You know, it's not a real betrayal. It's the cat, either because the cat is a shapeshifter, which I don't know if I said that in the cat section, but the cat is a shapeshifter. That's a big oversight if I didn't say that. Whoops. Anyways, the cat is a shapeshifter and it can shapeshift into things. But I do think there's like a level of certain betrayals that just happen, but then they kind of weren't really on their side to begin with, like the factions, for example. Do they ever really betray them if TXT didn't even completely believe they were on their side? Like, they were always a little suspicious of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Clan was like, oh my god, you are the boys of destiny. Like, you're gonna save the world, and TXT's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I have a performance to perform at. Thanks for helping us and teaching us some magic, but like, you're kind of creeping me out, you know? And they're like, oh my god, the boys of destiny, train them. But then they're also like, you know, stabbing them in the back. More on that in a bit. But yeah, they are supposed to be working up to destroy the dragon at the end. That's supposed to be what they're doing. They're supposed to do that, according to the laws of the universe, I guess. At one point they will have to face the dragon, and it's either them or the dragon, right? That was the rules that we set down earlier. Speaking of the dragon, this is another failure condition for them. They actually learn about the truth of the dragon. Like, they don't really know what the dragon is the whole time. They're like, okay, we have to face some dragon, but they don't realize the dragon is like the literal bringer of the apocalypse. Like, they only learn that they have to A, face the dragon of any kind, and B, face the apocalypse and try to stop the apocalypse, like, quite late in the story. And they haven't really been practicing for that, and they just didn't really, like, know about it at all. So that's kind of like a defeat condition for them, like an extra, like, ooh, like that's a little bit rough. That's kind of against them being victors. You know, like, how are you going to succeed in a universe where you don't even know that that's what you're supposed to do, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's a setup for failure. However, they do eventually learn that in order to defeat the dragon, they have to sing this song called the Song of the Star Song. I think they translated it as the Stars Song. But according to them, this has to be sung by the most innocent one. I think Soobin's future tells them that. This innocent one is not any of the members, by the way. It's actually like a being that Soobin specifically needs to connect to, since only elves can connect to this being. So I think it's a being that exists in like another universe that he basically lets possess him, and then they can sing the song. That's the setup from what I understand. It's never fully explained, but basically in the web novel they talk about this a lot more. Their type of magic is called possession magic, and they learn to use it quite early on from the Dragon Clan. Basically, it lets them use their race's powers to its fullest because they kind of like are possessed by their race or something like that. I don't fully understand it. I genuinely don't fully understand it. Anyways, that whole Star of the Song through Soobin thing, which I think is what we see in the Doom's Night, is exactly like, you know, an extension of that power. Probably. We've known that they had to sing this star song because they showed it to us. I think they told us about it as early technically as Magic Island, and then we did also see them singing the star song to defeat the dragon in the Doom's Night. So, but actually, why is it that singing to a dragon actually defeats it in the first place? Like, that doesn't even make, like, why does that happen? Well, the reason this happens is actually a pretty big spoiler, so I'm gonna do a spoiler countdown. This is the only other one in the video, I promise. 3, 2, 1. The song itself is the dragon's true name. I'm guessing this thing is singing the dragon's true name to it, and if you know anything about true names, basically knowing a person's true name allows you to have some control over them, so they can then just control the dragon and say, hey, stop that. So, you know, that's exactly how and why that happens. Now you know. Okay, spoilers over. Also, with the dragon just defeated by singing the song to it, well, that's kind of the end of the Mainline universe. They get some magic, they get some help from other places, basically, and they defeat the dragon. 3 steps. 3 easy steps. So yeah, that's the end. Or is it? I'm actually not sure if defeating the dragon is the true ending or not. I mean, it's certainly an ending. It's kind of how the web novel ends, and likely the webtoon, but I don't know, a true ending? Really? You know how in video games sometimes there's like a good ending, and like that's like the good ending. I think there's like a better ending, but we don't know it yet, personally. I mean, I guess we'll see. I actually really hope that TXT continues on, like, with something new maybe, or whatever, just, you know, after the Star Seekers completes, because I know this is, again, is the mainline story section, but just the fact that the story of itself is like all this drama and this kind of hectic debut sort of feeling, and then it fades into like a happy, like, oh, we're happy because we're here with friends in Moa or whatever, and they get to tour and perform because the dragon is finally gone. Like, that's nice. That's a good cute kind of poetic ending, and it's exactly the kind of success that I would wish for my boys. Haha. Anyway, other than the actual story that plays out, there are other important points that I'm going to go over because we're not actually done here. Just more important things that I feel like you need to know about the Mainline universe that happen that you can kind of look out for because they reference it a lot. And the themes are kind of touched on in multiple different ways throughout music videos, and they still come through every time, even if it's not so clear. So they are the Boys of Destiny, obviously. TXT, Star 1. Shoot. They're supposed to defeat the dragon, as I mentioned. That's one of like the 3 major things. Magic, dragon. Wait, what was the first thing? Anyway. But again, they don't actually want that responsibility. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to do my thing. So basically, they think they're supposed to serve the dragon, you know, make it so that basically half the universe, like Thanos snaps, and they're like, Okay, only people with magic live, basically. Or destroy the dragon and thus stop the apocalypse, or just fail altogether and the apocalypse just happens. That's technically an option, I guess. Obviously, this fate of fighting the dragon in some capacity is forced on them through situations. Just because, you know, I think them existing is literally the trigger for the dragon to appear in the universe. So if they exist, so too does Magic Island and the dragon. That's just how it goes. Their fans, Ion, not Moa in this case, but it's Moa, are important to the story and actually quite integral to defeating the dragon. That's how they defeat it. It's like a major turning point for Star One at the end of the web novel. It's because Moa comes in, Ion comes in and helps them. That's the only reason they win, I'm not gonna lie. The world is becoming increasingly more and more corrupt thanks to a substance called black water. It's basically the well of human emotions. And when it runs out, so too do people's humanity. It's actually made into potions, like think of like magic potions in like a video game or something like that, where it restores your health just magically. It's like that. And they are usually tricked in by the Dragon Clan into being able to drink this. Or the cat, as we see like in the Temptation trailer as well. Although in that one, now that I think about it, the cat drinks the potion. Now that I think about it, what the heck? The cat drinks the potion. I have some thoughts about the cat. That's for a different video though. But they don't really know about the side effects of the potion at the time that this happens. And they don't know its true source for sure at the time. Basically, it's marketed in that universe as a way to help you replenish energy after using a lot of magic. But you basically get addicted to it and then you can't like use the same level of magic that you used to be able to use, so it like kind of dulls the amount of strength that you'll have. And obviously they were giving it to the boys because they were like, oh, we will control them this way through the, you know, stuff that we've given them. They're not going to be too strong for us. We can handle them. So yeah, that's like all around not great, but that's not it. Because again, I said they didn't know the source of it, and the source of it, again, is the well of human emotions. In the web novel, they actually kind of visit their alternate universe selves, and I kind of talked about how the alternate universes help them, but this is why I think the alternate universes are really important. Basically, these are the other versions of them that kind of had their, like, fates, their true names come true, but in the worst possible way. So, you know, they get stuck in a forever frosty landscape, or they're forever just fighting against stuff. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, because I do think that this will be shown in the webtoon, which a lot of people are reading. But a bunch of stuff happens in the, like, bad end versions, okay? The important thing that you do need to take away from this, without going too into the spoiler realm, is that they get sort of magical artifacts that are given to them that make them more powerful. So that includes, like, Beomgyu's box, like his infinity box, right? It's kind of like when you open it, it has a sort of power inside that you can then use. And Taehyun gets the understanding of how to use more magic and how to like interact with it. They get a flower crown that allows you to like use more knowledge, but we have actually seen when they use the flower crown maybe too soon, it kind of attacks you if it doesn't think you're worthy. Hello, Eternity, Yeonjun. Eugene, I'm so close to that one. I just said it. And so on and so forth. They get kind of these things that just help them, which may pop up again in the future. But in return, the boys kind of drop in on that universe and they kind of help them solve their problem in one way or another, because it's just them left. Basically, they failed. There's no more groups of 5. And so the boys drop in and they're like, hey, we're all here. We'll help you solve this problem. And then they solve it, and then I think it's kind of implied that they bring that universe back into balance after that, after the like 5 boys that we know from Star One kind of leave back to their universe originally. The universe that they helped kind of balances out again and potentially returns to normal, or has a future where it returns to normal. Again, Ion, Moa is the like missing people, the ones who've passed away, the deceased fans from other universes, so they literally come in and sort of help them at the end by basically it being an additional voice, but like many voices, because it's collective missing, like it's collectively everyone, so it's a lot of people at once basically singing the Song of the Star, which again, I think the star is related to Moa, and thus the dragon is defeated. So that they can always fulfill that one original wish in the original timeline to, of course, be together like that forever. For some reason, I don't know why, but this ghost of the collective missing Moa Ion type thing always talks to Soobin very specifically. I don't know why this is. It might be because of his elf status somehow, like because he can see the future, or because he's the one who needs to connect to the creature, the being that he basically channels through him to like sing the Song of the Star in the first place. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because he's the leader. He's like has leader status. I don't know. But it also seems tied to the die that Soobin gets. I do believe Moa gave him the die, basically. It is possible that Moa does actually get corrupted, though. But where are they going? Where is Star 1 going? I remembered that time. I'm guessing it's kind of like a non-traditional ending, personally. Like I said before, the web novel kind of ended with them defeating the dragon and then, you know, big happy ending. And it was all due to the help from the other universes who gifted them things, and of course Moa, the Eternity Girl, the collective missing, however you want to say it. But we still have songs that are like, can't we just leave the monster alive? Where they're just like, they understand that it's a gameplay loop essentially of them going to the dungeon and then destroying the monster at the end in order to save the universe. So part of me wonders, is this the true ending, or is this just a good ending? Okay, but I hear your protesting cries. What about the music videos that aren't in the Starseekers verse? Like, they have the story too. Yes, they do, and I think it actually kind of relates to the Starseekers, thanks to the pesky little multiverse that I mentioned before. So now let's talk about the music video only universe. We will be swapping back to using the real names because I made so many mistakes. I keep wanting to say the real names. But we're going back to them also just because I feel like there's a differentiation between the two, you know. They have the character names in the Starseekers, and then here they have their actual names. Again, though, all fictional, just so we're clear. But basically, TXT have a storyline that essentially only takes place in their music videos. It's not one-to-one with the Starseekers, like there's not necessarily something that's following the Starseekers exactly, but it definitely like references it. They tend to go through a lot of the same obstacles. Personally, I believe these are actually kind of like alternate universes, like different ones in the multiverse, where just events happen differently. And I actually do sort of have some evidence for that, so just hold tight. But you can see this even when looking at music videos like Puma or Can't You See Me, where it doesn't really like follow any of the narrative that we've just talked about that's like officially Starseekers, but the themes are still sort of there, and you can actually relate it to a lot of the stuff that's going on in the Starseekers universe. They're very good supports. But the music videos that I'm mostly going to be talking about here today in the music video verse are the Japanese and Korean versions of 0 by 1 Equals Love Song, Loser Lover, Good Boy Gone Bad, and of course Sugar Rush Ride. However, I believe music videos like Runaway are kind of like an isolated glimpse at like the same thing happening in like in its own universe, basically. Like you literally have them start out with the magic they find, and then they start running away from something, which in their case is the fire, and then they find Magic Island, and then in their case, in Runaway, they decide to stay on Magic Island, so in theory, the fire consumed the real world, aka the dragon. Sort of the same premise, even though like it's like fewer beats and like more condensed, and it kind of still retains that magical feel, but basically they choose to stay in the dream, right? Magic Island. So if you like go back to the mainline universe that I was drawing before, where they have the like main story concept and then it branches out, like that could be like a branch of a universe, basically. They're the ones that kind of break off to differentiate from each other, so they get further away from the point, but they're still like related. And actually, because of this, I do find that some of them are like kind of like parallel realities or maybe slightly different endings. Korean versus the Japanese versions could have different endings, like one's a loser ending and one's a lover ending kind of thing. Or maybe like the Sugar Rush Ride music video where Yeonjun is in the car could have one ending versus the way that Good Boy Gone Bad ends, how it has like two potential endings. One's a more bad ending and one's a more like they decide to not go so deep into it kind of ending. I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened, but it is a possibility, and that could be why they look so similar. Again, there's nothing else to support this universe other than the music videos and what we watch. That's like the only thing. There's no other written media about it. It's literally our interpretations of that. But I will say a lot of this still follows the base, like, rules of the universe, and in Sugar Rush Ride's case, it literally references, like, these little animals that appeared in the questioning films that later appeared in Sugar Rush Ride, obviously. I talk about that a lot more in the, like, video I made breaking down Sugar Rush Ride, but, like, just as an example, because I didn't talk about it today, that's just, it's referencing something that's actually TU content. So clearly it is meant to follow and support it, but it's not so strictly adhering to this event happens, and they're fighting the things, and then there's the dragon, you know what I mean? They're still following the basic rules of this universe, and then similar challenges present themselves just because, again, they're TXT. They exist in the world, and therefore these obstacles always come into play. So again, just like how it started with Runaway, when it comes to like 0 by 1 equals Love Song and all of that, it follows very similar emotional beats to the mainline universe. First, we see the setup of them like running away. They're having fun, causing chaos along the way, and of course ignoring the consequences. This runs parallel to the mainline universe, where they're sort of running away from the things that they're responsible for. They don't really want to be like the Boys of Destiny. They just want to have fun. They just want to do the thing that they want to do, which is, of course, be famous idols and, you know, be there for Moa, or I guess Ion in that case. We're not counting those anymore, right? But basically, they just want to ignore all those responsibilities and have fun and do what they want. However, in Loser Lover, things take a bit more of a drastic turn because, of course, actions have consequences, and we sort of start to see hints of those consequences beginning to take root. Yeonjun, especially in this, is guilty, which again is a huge parallel to the mainline universe, where Yeonjun is the one who makes the contract with the cat. Again, the cat representing greed, and in this case, Yeonjun is the one who steals money, again, represented by greed. It is around this point that he gets, like, betrayed by Moa. But this could also just be the stand-in for, in general, the concept of people turning on them through their perspective, again, as I said, in the webtoon in general, where sometimes maybe it's not necessarily the other person betrayed them, but maybe they're doing it for their own good. Maybe Moa's calling for their own good. Maybe Moa is representing the greed of the cat again. The cat is manipulating here because we do see that Moa steals the money in A Good Boy Gone Bad. It is still the fault of greed, the cat, evil, whatever you want to call it. And that is why they are betrayed. Truly the greatest of all evils. Then, of course, we literally see them encountering the magic, encountering Magic Island, which in their recent music video is actually quite the bold point. But as I mentioned before, it's not as common in the mainline universe. It's more seen in, like, the music videos only. And of course, just in general, they are drawn to the island by temptations. This falls in line with, like, the magical offerings and temptation of the potions kind of in the mainline universe, where just taking them instantly replenishes your energy. You're all better, everything's great. In this case, the island has all the sweetness and benefits of ease, but it always ends up having some sort of caveat. We do see the island is alive, and it's possible, like in Runaway, it wants to keep them there. After all, if we imagine that the island is the birthplace of the dragon, if they're stuck on the island, I mean, the dragon could just kind of go and do its thing and cause the apocalypse. That's generally an overview of what actually happens in the alternate universe. And I do just want to reiterate one more time, there's no written media that supports any of this stuff. It's literally just us looking at the music videos and being like, this ties in with things. These are the themes, this is the story that's going on, and it's definitely one continuous story. They use like a lot of purposeful connecting shots. And I will say that Big Hit and Hybe sort of design things with the intention of it being interpreted with multiple meanings. it's applicable to multiple sides. For example, you could argue music videos like We Lost the Summer are just relatable because everyone went through the pandemic, everyone went through like that isolated feeling. But so too could you say that it has to relate to their story, which again, I believe kind of just relates to real life in general. Look, they've been led to this place where they are lonely and isolated from other people, and now it's freezing over. And I mean, of course, TXT also then later had Frost, where everything freezes over, so you could say that it's connected in that sense, because We Lost the Summer, it's frozen, Frost, it is also frozen. It's a never-ending winter. And I actually think that both those interpretations are correct. It's both a little bit about the pandemic and a little bit about the story that they want TXT to tell, because they want to be able to, you know, tell that story, but then they also want TXT to be able to address and talk about the things that they want to talk about. Because the things that are happening in the world are the things that people will connect with, right? And that in itself is growing up, you know, that is growth, which essentially is what TXT is all about. When you grow up, you start to look at the things around you, and you see society, injustice, corporations, and then you kind of decide how you feel about these things. So yeah, these stories just kind of follow the same rules as the multiverse, the base multiverse, and the general themes between like the main line and the alternate storyline are kind of kept the same, but they can also have different interpretations based on things that are happening in life, basically. And I think that's great. But we've been talking a lot about the things that they want to say, and I haven't actually explicitly talked about their message, have I? Well then, let's move on to the next section, because arguably the meaning of music is like one of the most important parts. So let's go. So, now that we understand the direction of their storyline and their universes, it's going to be a lot easier to talk about what they want to talk about, what they want to share with us, and why, of course, their story is so important. If you remember, your English or literature teachers are always saying, like, there's a theme in every story. Yeah, that's what this is. Except, it's hopefully less boring than when your English teacher was talking to you. It's important to remember that TXTs are going in circles in their universe. It's like a cycle every time, the same thing sort of happens over and over and over again, which means that we do experience a lot of the events in like different points of views. So that means we do get to experience a lot of these events just from different points of views at different points in their life or whatever. For example, Blue Hour. It shows them falling into fantasy, literally falling, and it's something completely wonderful. But in the Japanese 0x1 = love song music video, it's shown as something very, very painful. The fall itself is painful, because they realize that the fantasy is nothing like the bleak reality that is surrounding them, which also especially highlights the heaps of trash and the sort of like smiley advertising that apocalyptically kind of feels out of place there. So yeah, circles. Perspectives. And yet, of course, still growth. TXT want you to grow with them, either from childhood to adulthood or just as a person in general. If we go back to our two examples, they could just be different perspectives of the exact same events happening, just at different points in that person's life. In childhood, imagination is the most wonderful, lovely thing. Even in your fantasy world, it kind of makes the, colors of reality just seem a little bit brighter. A Ferris wheel against the background of a sky at Blue Hour is just as magical as any other magical world, fantasy world, would be at that same time of day. It feels like the same thing is just magical. But at a certain point, people grow up and they will look cynicism in the face. Even if they aren't inherently cynical or negative, it's still a concept that will most certainly be introduced to them. They might realize that, magic isn't real, and their childhood dreams were too fantastical to ever exist in any sort of reality. This could be heartbreaking. They might choose to sort of leave it all behind and rebel against an unfair society by acting out, similar to, how TXT acts out. Or perhaps they could accept that while fantasy and reality are separate, that they both survive despite such a thing. Fantasy can even bring a little bit of magic into the real world, or indulge in the wonders that people's imaginations can actually bring into our world, into our reality. And that actually brings us to another of TXT's major themes, the possibility of indulging too much. TXT's previous album, Temptation, was a lot about that. And as Soobin himself said in an ad for the album, it is about the dangers of instant gratification.
This album talks about how you are seduced by the sweetness of instant gratification.
Sugar Rush Ride highlighted this especially well. It was actually a major feature of my video that was explaining it, so if you are curious, go click the card. I think it's this side. Click the card. Or this side. Whatever side has the card, click that to watch that video, yeah. But basically, TXT took the story that we knew at that point in time and then put a different spin on it. They shone it in a little bit of a darker light. We saw the trickery that was behind some of the more innocent seeming actions that were taken. And we saw that maybe they were a little bit too into the fantasy, their magic island. Just like how it's far too easy for us nowadays to delve into our favorite Netflix show, or how quickly we get updates about new content to consume. And of course, just the sheer amount of content in general. This video is also very long, so. However, a Weverse magazine article highlighted this very well. They said, "The same is true for all of us lately. We're incredibly fond of performing mental gymnastics to warp reality and turn a blind eye. By carefully curating your social media timeline, you can fully replace the real world with the world of your mind. If the ground beneath you is crumbling anyway, is it really so wrong to harbor illusions of flight?" And it's all in our phones at our fingertips. It's sitting on the phone that you might even be watching this video on. And I think this is what they wanted to bring our attention to. Not to condemn anyone necessarily, because we all participate in it, but just to make people more aware. What are you spending your time on? Who are you outside of the media and the content that you consume? And also, what is the goal of the people who put that content in your hands in the first place? And that brings us yet again to another one of the main themes of TXT's story, and also, of course, a favorite antagonist. The cat. Again, the devil, greed, as Hybe conveniently wrote for us. And it answers that question too, about what was the motive of the person that put the content in your hands in the first place. Greed seems to be the primary driving emotion that stirs corporations find ways to put more and more content into your hands more and more quickly, quick as they possibly can. Similar to Yeonjun in Loser Lover, greed for money especially seems to be the reason for this. But there are likely other factors, of course, just depending. Social standing and recognition, for example. Greed in indulgence and personal vanity. TXT talks about this in recent music as well. Trust Fund Baby is a good example of this. Literally just go look at the lyrics. So again, what is the primary motive of someone who's offering you something? Does greed seem like the primary motivator? Even if their effort seems humanitarian, you have to look between the lines. How often do you hear about charities who are like embezzling money or something? Of course, this is one person's interpretation of what's going on here and what they're showing to us. My own. It's mine. If you take anything from this part of the video, please, you shouldn't necessarily believe everything that someone tells you, even if they seem to have done a lot of research on it, or seem particularly convicted in how they communicate it to you. Charisma is a really big factor in making you think you understand something, even if maybe that person has no clue what they're talking about. I think that's what my whole YouTube channel is based off of, actually. In the end, I personally do feel like I have evidence to back up my claims, and I believe what I'm saying, but even still, I think it's important to come to build the habit of making your own opinions on things that you hear. Forming your own opinions, not necessarily because you heard someone say them, but because you've actually thought about it. I actually believe TXT has moments referencing this idea as well. Initially, for example, the dragon faction. They believe what they tell them to a degree, that the dragon is good and it'll bring about a new world. They can be taught to harness their magic, and that potions are helpful for them. It isn't until later that they realize their mistakes and the true depth of these lies that were told to them. Of course, again, they were always just a little suspicious. But they kind of had a what's the harm in staying here for a while mentality about it. Don't take everything offered to you without yourself putting in any effort, and don't believe everything you're told without putting in some of your own time to research it yourself. Making these sort of mistakes and then coming to realize them are kind of just a part of growing up. As a child, you don't really necessarily have the frame of mind to know better, but then to, of course, go along with everything that the adults are telling you, because of course they must know. But as you grow up and learn more about the world, you have the chance to make your own choices and figure out if the things that were told to you are actually things that you agree with. Anyways, beyond the more dark side of society type stuff, TXT also sort of talks about and reflects upon their journey as idols in real life. Things like the pressure to do well and to be perfect right away, their love for their fans, stairs, not elevator, the Weverse magazine articles, which are basically backed by Hybe, because let's be honest, Weverse is associated with Hybe, often talks about these connections as well. Here's a few quotes. So from the article Tomorrowbytogether's Act Sweet Mirage World Tour report, they said, "The final section starts off with Farewell Neverland, a song about the group members breaking free from temptation, then moves on to Blue Spring, the group's first song dedicated to their fans and which they revealed for the first time on this tour, and finishes with Our Summer. The boys have Moa with them at all times throughout the 3-story packed hours, right to the end. Our Summer encapsulates how, even as the venue changes and the seasons transition through the tour, Tomorrowbytogether's feelings are unwavering. No matter where we are, no matter what season it is, as long as we're together, it feels like summer." From the article, Tomorrowbytogether has made a name for themselves in the US, which is about their success on Billboard 200. They said, "Their continued sales prove the steady climb Tomorrowbytogether is making, and the name chapter Temptations #1 on the Billboard 200 is evidence of the group's popularity. The group started out young and embarrassed by the horns growing on their head. At some point they reckoned with the devil's temptation, luring in their fans all the while. Now the 4th generation boy group has shown the world what they really are. The next big thing." From the article, TXT's logo chronicles how they've grown up. "We're focusing on efforts making sure Tomorrowbytogether's logo conveys what the artist is currently going through that's allowing them to grow, and a bit of what they're likely to face in the future. Tomorrowbytogether's main lineup of albums, the Chapter series, shows how they grow over time, shifting their focus from being part of their peer group to becoming one side of a couple, to discovering their true identity." And Taehyun, who is one of many to have mentioned this, talks about in the interview article, Taehyun, "I think once you felt your fans' presence, it's impossible not to work hard," where he got asked, "Have you never wanted to put your development on hold and give in to temptation?" Taehyun responds, "I never really give in to temptation, no matter how tempting it is. There's temptation constantly, today, yesterday, the day before that, every day. I think about sleeping more, taking a longer break, going home without practicing, but I realize I'm practicing anyway. I think it's an unbelievable blessing if you're doing the work that you want to do. I also experienced a clash between things I want to do and things I have to do, and I've ended up doing the things I have to do." And basically there's many, many more articles just like those. So many that I will literally run out of time just talking about and reading articles, and also it's probably more boring, but if you are interested, I really recommend just going on Weverse magazine, sorting it by TXT, and just looking at all of the articles that they've posted about TXT on Weverse magazine. You will quickly see what I mean. They mention it so often. Also, I really want to talk about this with someone because I never see anyone mentioning anything about the Weverse magazine articles, and they're super well written and very well thought out, and like, anyway. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I really wanted to shout out everyone who just requested this video. You've been requesting it for ages now. I haven't made like everything in TXT Universe video in like 2 years, so thank you so much. I spent like maybe 2 months writing this script and like filming everything basically, so I really hope that you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on so that YouTube tells you every single time I post a video. I do plan on covering things on TXT's comeback, so if this is out before the comeback, which I hope it is, please keep an eye out for that. Massive shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Without them, I would not be able to pay my editor, who is doing a fantastic job with all of these video edits recently. And of course, if you are a patron, you get to read over my scripts early. I literally had a couple of them just like read over this script and be like, please let me know if you think I'm missing anything. So those are some of the benefits that you can get if you are a patron. Of course, it is totally optional, but it does help me grow this channel and, you know, make videos. So finally, I did just want to say that these facts are ever changing, and of course the comeback is literally like right around the corner, so there might be new information that will make some of the information that I shared in this video, you know, maybe a little bit less accurate, but I'm a single person, and though I have other people read things, and I have another editor, you know, things might get missed, so just please let me know if anything is incorrect, and I can try to update that in a future video for you guys. And until next time, stay sunny, everyone. Bye!
A few moments later.
There's a new light stick version coming out soon, guys. Oh my god. Wait, that is exciting. I keep forgetting! This is important information. There's a new version coming out for TXT's light stick soon. Tell me what you think it'd look like. This has nothing to do with the theory. I'm just curious. Okay. Goodbye. Next section.